Picture a misty battlefield during Japan's Genpei War in the late 12th century, where a woman in armor grips a naginata, a traditional pole weapon, her eyes blazing as she fights alongside samurai. Or imagine a young girl in a silk kimono, barely 13, standing silently as her future is sealed in a hushed exchange between families. From the Kamakura period in 1192 to the end of the Tokugawa era in 1868, feudal Japan is often seen through a romantic lens. Cherry blossoms in full bloom, warriors in shining armor, and the haunting melodies of the koto during tea ceremonies. We've all heard the tales of valiant samurai, but what about their mothers, wives, and daughters? The truth shatters this illusion. Women in feudal Japan faced a brutal reality, trapped by rigid customs and a philosophy called Confucianism that stripped them of their voices. They were forced into arranged marriages as children, denied education, and often pushed into dangerous lives in red-light districts, their dreams crushed under the weight of a society that valued them only for obedience. Yet, in this darkness, sparks of resilience flickered to life. Some women became onna-bugeisha, fierce female warriors, others turned into cunning Kunoichi spies, and many, like the Geisha, preserved Japan's cultural arts with grace and grit. This article uncovers their hidden stories, tales of heartbreak and heroism, to reveal the incredible strength of women history often overlooked. Can you imagine living in a world where your entire life was dictated by your gender? Share your thoughts with us as we dive into these untold stories. 2. The social order, caught in the grip of tradition. Feudal Japan was a society built on strict hierarchy, where everyone had a fixed place. At the bottom were women, whether daughters of noble samurai or humble farmers. A belief system called Confucianism, originally from China and adapted in Japan over centuries, merged with bushido, the samurai code that emphasized loyalty and honor, further entrenching women's subservience. According to historian Hitomi Tonomura, this philosophy became the bedrock of society, reinforced by writings like Onna-bugeisha, a guidebook from the Edo period that demanded women be humble and submissive. Even religion piled on. In Shinto, Japan's native faith, women were often seen as impure during menstruation or childbirth, barring them from sacred rituals. Cultural traditions and spiritual beliefs kept women trapped in the shadows, with little room to dream beyond their roles. Despite this, women found ways to endure and resist. Samurai wives used their expected obedience to influence family decisions, while others preserved culture through folk songs and oral stories, passing down wisdom in whispers. Their spirits refused to be fully broken. Have you ever felt pressured by societal expectations to fit into a certain role? How do these ancient traditions compare to modern pressures? Let us know. 3. Bound by duty, marriage, and the denial of education. In feudal Japan, a girl's life was defined by constraints from a young age. Take Hana, a 13-year-old in 16th century Japan, who once dreamed of exploring the world beyond her village, her laughter echoing through the rice fields. But her future was decided as her parents arranged her marriage to a samurai twice her age through an omiai meeting, a formal introduction where families evaluated her based on looks and homemaking. Skills, not feelings. Hana had no say in her fate. Her childhood was stolen as she stepped into a stranger's home, expected to obey her new husband and his family. If she failed to meet expectations, she could be divorced and sent back in shame, often rejected by her own family. Education offered, no escape. Knowledge was a privilege reserved for men. Women like Noguchi Yone, an Edo period scholar who studied literature and philosophy, were ridiculed for pursuing unwomanly ambitions, their minds left to wither in a world that refused to let them grow. Yet some women carved out small freedoms. In rural villages, rules were less rigid. allowing slight choice in marriage partners. By the late Tokugawa period, small private schools for girls emerged, hinting at change. Samurai daughters occasionally learned martial arts, wielding a naginata, to defend their homes. These cracks in the system offered hope, even if small. Can you imagine having your future decided at 13, or being denied an education because of your gender? What would that feel like? Share your thoughts. 4. Red light districts and geisha, artistry amid exploitation. In cities like Edo, red light districts like Yoshiwara were a grim reality. Aiko, sold by her impoverished family to pay debts, lived as an oiran, a high-class courtesan whose name means leading flower, marked by her elaborate kimono and towering hairpins. Meanwhile, geisha trained for years to master dance, music, and conversation, becoming icons of elegance. Aiko's life was a nightmare. Her every move watched, her body a commodity, her spirit crushed under endless nights serving strangers. She faced violence and disease, and even if she earned freedom, society would never accept her back. Geisha, though respected, trained from childhood in okiya houses, performing for wealthy patrons and sometimes pressured into roles beyond artistry. I can't help but wonder how heavy their hearts must have felt, balancing beauty and exploitation in a dance on the edge of a blade. Yet these women left a lasting mark. Geisha preserved traditional arts like kabuki dance and shamisen music, becoming cultural treasures. Oiran like Takao too, who lived in Yoshiwara in the 17th century, became legends for their grace and intelligence, their stories echoing through time. Their talents endured despite the hardship. What would it be like to live as a geisha, balancing artistry with societal pressure? Have you ever felt torn between your talents and expectations? Share your experiences. 5. Women in unique roles, courage in the shadows. Not all women accepted their prescribed roles. Tomoe Gozen, a 12th century warrior, rode into battle during the Genpei War, her name immortalized in the Heike Monogatari, a famous epic. Kunoichi, female ninjas, like Mochizuki Chiyome, who trained a network of female spies in the 16th century, used espionage skills to outwit enemies. Others, like Lady Yodo, a concubine who mediated peace talks in the late 16th century, acted as diplomats between feuding clans. As the battle cries grew louder, Tomoe steadied herself, her hands trembling as she gripped her naginata, knowing one misstep could mean death, not just for her, but for her family's honor. Kunoichi, like Chiyome, faced torture or execution if caught, their deception seen as an insult to enemies. Diplomatic women like Lady Yodo risked their lives to maintain fragile alliances. Their courage burned brightly against a backdrop of prejudice. Their legacies endure as symbols of resilience. Tomoe's story inspired generations. Chiyome's network showed women's strategic brilliance, and women like Lady Yodo helped shape Japan's political landscape. They proved that courage knows no gender. If you were a kunoichi like Mochizuki Chiyome, what would be the hardest part of risking your life as a spy, fear of capture, or the judgment of your own society? Let us know. 6. Under pressure. Beauty standards and the peasant struggle. Beauty in feudal Japan was a demand, not a choice. Noble women followed strict standards, pale skin, long hair, and junihido robes with up to 12 layers, plus traditions like ohaguro, blackening their teeth, seen as a mark of maturity and beauty, and believed to protect teeth in a time of limited dental care, and hikimayu, redrawing eyebrows higher, symbolizing elegance. Peasant women, like Saki, worked from dawn to dusk in rice fields, their hands calloused as they wove cloth to support their families. Noble women faced ostracism for not meeting beauty standards, refusing to blacken teeth, though strange to Us now was a revered symbol of sophistication back then. In the Heian court, failure to comply might lead to banishment. Saki's life was equally grueling. Famines left her children hungry, their small hands clutching at her tattered kimono. During wartime, peasant women bore the burden alone, their hearts breaking as they struggled to keep their families alive. This resilience paved the way for the changes that would soon arrive. Noble women wrote poetry to assert individuality, while Saki and her peers joined Ikki rebellions to demand fairness, their folk songs preserving Japan's oral tradition. Their strength, whether in elegance or endurance, sustained their communities. What do you think of beauty standards like blackened teeth? Have you heard a story of resilience from a woman in your family's history? If so, how does it compare to Saki's struggle? Share with us. 7. The Meiji Transition, a Glimmer of Hope. By the mid-19th century, Japan faced Western pressure, leading to the Meiji era in 1868, a time of transformation with new laws, schools for girls, and jobs in textile factories. Change was slow. Old traditions like arranged marriages lingered, and rural women still toiled under harsh conditions. Saki watched her daughter toil in the fields, her eyes filled with the same despair she once knew, as the promise of progress felt like a cruel mirage. Still, the seeds of change took root. Women began working in factories, contributing to Japan's modernization. Reformers like Tsuda Umeko, who founded Joshi Eigaku Juku, now Tsuda University, in 1900, opened schools for girls. By the early 20th century, magazines like Sato gave women a platform, marking the start of Japan's feminist movement. For Saki, change was a flickering hope on the horizon. How do these early steps toward equality compare to today's challenges for women? Are there historical figures you admire for advancing women's rights? Share with us. 8. Conclusion. A legacy of resilience. This journey through feudal Japan has revealed stories of struggle and strength, from young brides like Hana to geisha preserving ancient arts to warriors like Tomoe Gozen. These women lived in a world that tried to silence them, yet they made their mark. They weren't just victims, they were creators, fighters, and survivors. Their dances, songs, and acts of bravery shaped Japan's culture in ways we still see today. Their struggles mirror the fight for equality that women across the globe, including in the U.S. and other English-speaking countries, continue to face. Let's honor these women by remembering their stories as the heart of history. Share your favorite with #HiddenLivesFeudalJapan to join the conversation. Want more untold stories? Stick with us for the next chapter. Which story resonated with you most? Share it with #HiddenLivesFeudalJapan and tell us why.